Right, one of the last things we need to do, and probably one of the most important things, especially if you're going to go down the IKFK kind of blending switcher route, etc., is making sure that all your joints are lined up in the correct orientation. So at the moment, we've had a good play with moving these things around and duplicating and rotating, etc. And there's a good chance that the actual orientation of these joints are wrong. So as a quick kind of example of what happens when it goes wrong is if we go into the top view and let's just create some joints. Okay, so if we zoom into this, hopefully you can see that the x-axis is pointing down the joint. So each joint has the axis pointing down, pointing towards the next joint, basically, apart from the one here at the end. So what happens is when we've been moving these around, we have been altering the orientation of the joint. So if we were to pick this one, for instance, and go into Edit Pivot, and just start moving these around. That should do, maybe. And back to the top view again. So now if we have a look at how these joints look, you can see now that the orientation is out. X no longer points down to the next bone. Now that one's slightly out, that one's slightly out. That one seems to be okay still, but that one's quite far out. So you can see by moving these around, we've got the joint in the wrong orientation. So in order to get this working correctly on our model, we need to get all this sorted out. And we're going to have a look at the second Comet tool, which is the Comet Joint Orientation tool. So do what you've done before, drag it into the window, run it and hit bits and bobs. So if I just go down to the bit of Mel script here and type in Comet Joint Orient, if I spelled Orient right, and hit that, we get the Joint Orient tool come on. Now Maya does have its own tool, and you can have a look at Maya's as well. And you can decide which one you like more. Personally, I like this one more, but like I said, you can try them both and see which one you like. So this works on all the joints that are selected, the same as the last one. So you need to select them all. One of the advantages of using Maya's tool is that you can select children and it will do all the children in the joint, but there's certain things that it doesn't do as well. So what we want is to get, first of all, if you turn on Show Axis, it shows you the actual orientation of the joints. So if you just go into perspective view, you can see kind of X is really all over the place on these joints here, and you want to try and get them facing in the correct direction. So back in the top view and select all these joints. So you have the aim axis. So the axis is basically where you want the joint to aim, obviously, and it should be X by default. Okay, so you want X to travel down to the next joint. The up axis is hopefully the same as what Maya's is. So Y is up in Maya, so we'll set that to Y. If you hit Orient Joints, it should orient the joints to the angle that we need. So you can see there X points to that joint, points to that joint, points to that joint, and it works its way along. One of the nice things about this tool is it also does the end joint as well, whereas Maya's doesn't. Maya will just basically stick with the same basic shape. It doesn't deal with the end one. But you can see there kind of everything is correct. You can see that Y is all over the place, But now this is a pretty extreme case in terms of what we're asking the orientation tool to do. It's not on a flat plane like where you need. It's a bit all over the place. So no, it's done its best. This would require quite a bit of tweaking to get this right realistically. But by changing the reverse or the aim axis, you can get this to point in pretty much any direction you want really. So if we change the x-axis to y and the up-axis to x and then hit orient joint, it does y to everything. Right? And you can change where you want the actual world direction to be as well. But like I said, this is a pretty extreme case. If for whatever reason it's pointing in the wrong direction, and you think, I need this to reverse, you can just hit the reverse key, hit it again, and it points in the opposite direction, obviously. So that's just a quick example of what it does. You have individual control down here at the bottom. So if for whatever reason you want it to be off center, you can go down to the tweak here and you can manually tweak these. So let's say you want to rotate in the z-axis and let's have it at 10 perhaps. So as you manually push this button, it will rotate every 10 axes. Now it'll work its way around. Now there's 180. So we're back in the same direction. And obviously you can do minus as well if you want to. And that just zeroes out the button again. So an extreme case, but it shows you what the actual script is trying to do. So if we just delete these, we don't really need them anymore. And have a look at what we actually have on our rig itself. So if we just select one bone, X looks like it's running down the right axis there, and there as well, and there. Seems to be running down the right axis there as well. But there kind of X is traveling in a different direction. Ideally we want it traveling in the same direction as what the foot is, but we can do all these at once. So if we just select all of these leg joints, we want the x-axis to travel along like it looks like it's pretty much doing already, and we want y to point upwards. So we'll give it a go. We'll hit this. We'll do show axes. At the moment everything looks correct, probably other than the one at the end, but we'll see what happens when we actually hit this button. So what it's doing is it's pointed X obviously in the opposite direction because you've got reverse turned on, and Y is pointing downwards because of the coordinate system. So just undo that, hit orient axis. Right, that's gone a bit strange as well. So change world axis to Y, hit it again, there you go. So we've got X now running down with Y pointing upwards. Obviously this is turned at 90 degrees or somewhere around there. So Y is still pointing up locally and X is still pointing forward. So we can do that with this joint as well. So if we select all of these, hopefully doing the same thing, should show something similar, which it does. Okay, hide the axis there. And hide the axes there. So we mirrored these across. So when we mirrored these, the chances are, yep, that these are now facing the opposite direction. So there's two options we have here, and it basically depends on how you want to animate your character. If you have X facing down in this direction, and we'll just sort this one out at the moment, and we have X facing down this direction, you can see that Z is facing down the negative Z, and here Z is facing the positive Z. So if we wanted to rotate this in FK mode, so if you have them both selected, and make sure this is turned to object, it is, and we rotated this, the arms move up and down. So we can do some kind of wing flap, whatever you want to do, which may be the way you want to go. But if you needed to rotate these both forwards at the same time, you're going to get this opposite. the way to solve it would be to get both these joints with their axis pointing down, but with their Z direction facing the same way. Obviously at that point Y would then be down on one of these. So we can select one of these. We want it rotating in the x-axis, so let's just hit 30. And we'll do 30, 60, 90, 120, 150, 180. Okay. So it's now being rotated by 180 degrees. X is still facing down. You could figure out which way this is by doing all of this stuff as well. Just a bit of trial and error. You know, try one axis, hit joint orient. I mean, let's do it now if you do this properly. So you can try reversing Y. There you go, straight away. So at this point, if you were to select these two joints now this rotation is now wrong. But if you do it from the top, we can now bring both legs in backwards at the same time. So it's very much just a preference thing as to how you'd like to do it, and also a case of what you would find most useful. Okay, right, so like I said, it doesn't really matter, but I like them having both pointing upwards. So everything pointing upwards would be ideal for me. So if we go through all of these, hit joint orient, and hopefully we've got the nice version here as well. Okay. So let's turn them axes off. At the back, we may have the same. So let's have a look at the axes. Everything seems to be fine. That's okay, that's great. And then again, we have a look at the rear stuff here as well. Show axes, orient joints. Everything's pointing along and upwards. Quick look at the neck perhaps. So let's see how the neck's doing. Show axes. Seems to be okay, but just to be on the safe side, and we can hit that as well. The head. You can see there it is slightly out because we moved it, so hitting that brings it back in line again. This one's a bit weird because obviously he has, you know, 3 ways of leaving that joint. So at this point, it's really it's not really that important as long as X points down the middle probably. So it doesn't make much difference to either side here. This seems to be the main one. It's right down the middle. I don't know what will happen if I click on this. Let's just see what it does. Okay, so it was fine as it was. Okay. We've got this joint here, and that looks like it's fine, but we can still click on it to see what it's doing. These two guys at the end, these two little particle emitters, things that we said they were. We can change them. Now, realistically, they're fine. I mean, kind of, they're not. They're not going to need any particular orientation that we're going to be fussed about. Again, this here, as long as it looks reasonable, that's okay. Show axes. That's all fine. Right down to the tail. And the second tail joint as well. The jaw, which seems to be okay. Nope, slightly out. So let's get the jaw lined up. This bone here. Get that one lined up. And the 2 eyeballs at the end. So you saw the dummies move there a bit because of the way they're orientated to this. At this point, you might want to sort these out manually, but we're going to use controllers for this anyway, so it's not hugely important. But as I said, you might want to kind of get these looking vertical. So it could just be a case of looking at it from the left view, just going in there, perhaps seeing it in wireframe mode, and lining these up manually. Okay, so that's there. Set that to 30. That could be fine for us. Okay, so that seems to be everything we need for the character. Let's have a quick look maybe. Just one last look. So everything there is pretty much pointing upwards. The orientation, if this isn't here, we'll probably need to sort that out as well. But everything looks pretty good now. We just need to select this bone, zero all these out, and perhaps trying to get it to match what we have here. So click on this, x-axis, orient joint. That should do, really. So that looks like we have everything that we need for the orientation. Okay, right. So that's the end of all the axis stuff that we need doing. So you can also see here, the last thing that we need is just kind of give this a quick check and make sure that all the scaling, etc., is set to all the correct things. The translation obviously is going to be out slightly because they've been translated from the previous bone. The important one is that one, and that currently still says 000000111, and the mesh hopefully hasn't been altered either. So that should be everything we need now to actually start skinning our model, and we'll look at that one in the next video.